Okay, gentlemen, I have to make this video to go through the pros and cons of binding and the correct type of binding. This video will serve for Mercedes and Porsche early cars. We're going to make a comparison between the German way of binding and the British way of binding. Now, I don't open up a whole can of worms about the 1966 World Cup, in which the winning goal hit the crossbar, bounced down on the line. We say our side, they say their side. You look at it on YouTube and you decide for yourself. The debate still goes on. I will say that we do a lot of British cars, particularly Jaguar, and the German cars are much better engineered trim, engineered upholstery. So I'm a big believer in the quality of German cars, which is why I drive and collect German cars, not British cars. Anyway, with that said, plus the food is much better in Germany. Whenever I go back to Europe, I avoid British food like the plague, and I really enjoy the German people and traveling through Germany. That's great times. With all that said, their binding is shit. It's no comparison. I don't know why they did it this way. I had a email recently from a customer in London. We did a right-hand drive Pre-A coupe, and he wrote, I got the stuff, looks fantastic, love the seat, love everything, but the binding on the carpet does not look very Germanic, said the Scotsman. And I said in my reply, yes, you're right, it doesn't look Germanic in so much as it's not a good looking binding. So the dilemma for us as manufacturers, we always try to reproduce everything exactly as original. That's our goal. If it was done nicely, we do it nicely. If it was done rough and ready, we replicate the rough and ready look. Now there's pros and cons of this. If you want your Porsche, early Porsche, like say 356, and let's say 190 SL, 113s, W113s SLs, if you want them to have the correct look, then you have the cloth binding with this raw edge. It comes out approximately 5/8 of an inch. You can see it there. So that the edge of the binding, here's the binding tape for the vinyl. It's 1.25 inches across. It gets some of the raw edge and the backing on the back. It's approximately 5/8 of an inch, and that's the look that most the factories in Stuttgart achieved. This was put on by hand. When I say by hand, it's not hand stitch. It's done with the sewing machine, but it's fed onto the carpet by hand. It's pulled and then stitched through, and subsequently has a very rough look, a very like I said, un-Germanic look, and that is the correct look. We've studied miles of this binding on original carpets, and we conclude a very inconsistent as far as width goes, positioning of the stitch, even within the car, even within the same car, almost like it done by two different people. Don't forget, every sewer, and there was mostly women at the factories both in the UK and Germany back then in the late 50s, 60s, sewing. They were racing through this stuff. They were throwing this stuff on. They were doing it day in, day out. There was no time for, show quality binding. That's just not how it was done. So the dilemma is this: do we make it look good, or do we make it look original? And I guess at the end of the day, my position is customer's choice. We can do it either way. Just as easy for us either way. Actually, I'll tell you, it's more difficult to do this rough and ready look with a cloth than it is to do the nice look that you see here on this Jaguar. This is Wilton wool carpet, and you can see how consistent it is. I'll explain how and why we get these differences, but it is more difficult to do this, and the end results are, as you can see, here's a corner German style, here's a corner Jaguar style. This edge, well, let me just start by saying this is the binding head. This is an attachment or a binding head. It's custom made. They're difficult to make, and it's a very special skill for making these, and so companies specialize in this. We had this one made, and you pass the carpet through under the head, and it sews the binding on. This one is set up for Jaguar style. Now I'm just gonna, I don't sew, so let's hope I don't break anything, but here we go. Press on the pedal here, and you can see it feeding through. But most importantly, you can see that that raw edge is turned by this gadget here. So right there is where it turns it, and so you have a nice finished edge tucked underneath, and it's a much thinner and consistent 3/8 of an inch, approximately 8-9 millimeters, versus this, 12 to 14 millimeters. And again, we see very inconsistent on both early Porsche and Mercedes. So that's the 101 on buying it. I'll give this one here. I guess, like I started to say, at the end of the day, we'll let the customer choose, and we'll ask, do you want it original, rough and ready, or do you want a more refined look? And the decisions vary. If it's a show car and you just got to have it, and you've got to have it absolutely authentic, then that's what you do. You make it like that. If it's a driver and you want it to look nicer, say for instance you're not using the rubber mats in the car, you're going through carpet without, you might choose to have this style binding. We can do this folded edge with the cloth, it's no problem there. And on Porsche 356 binding, they used, actually with the SLs as well, but they used cloth on some models and vinyl on others. From memory, they used the vinyl binding on Speedsters and Roadsters. Cabrios and Coupes, for some reason, had the cloth binding. 190 SL, of course, cloth binding like this. And the 113 Pagodas, this piece of carpet is actually off a 113 230 SL. And then by the time they got the 280s, they did away with the wool square weave and went with German loop, a synthetic. They went to vinyl binding. Okay, so there's an example. This is a customer. This is a piece off a 356 Roadster, actually, and customer in this case chose to have the nice, albeit non-original look to the binding. Let's call it Jaguar style binding. This customer here on the SL wants the original look. When I explained to the customer in the UK on his Pre-A, he was happy with the explanation and decided to stick with the not very Germanic look, which actually was Germanic in every way. So there you go, there's the 101 on binding. At the end of the day, your call, we can do it either way. And we do, I've been meaning to make this video for a long time because we get asked this. This explains the choices here. In addition to that video I just made for the German binding, this is the cloth binding. We get it from Germany. As you can see, it has the original Dolby or herringbone pattern weaved right into this cloth. Hopefully the camera will pick that up. So there we go. This is how the cloth looks. Of course, raw edge both sides, and that's the final result.